Are you with me?
I'm with you, pal.
All right.
So Boo Boo had his kid yesterday.
Man, holy smokes,
amazing,
bro.
dude.
Baby boy. He's got a house full of girls, and then boom, baby boy.
I know, that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, man, he's finally got some backup in there.
Yeah, man. I don't know how you do it, bro.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I've just got the sass of one daughter. I don't understand. Like, two sassies running around this place.
They fight like nobody's business, I'll tell you that much.
I mean, my kids do the, brother, sister, sibling kind of arguing and stuff, but I just know that it's got to be different.
I mean, it could be really cool, but boy, when they argue, it's like they just keep on and on. I mean, all day. Are we talking about any of the fantasy face-off stuff or no?
We kind of made an audible. I
don't even know what that is.
God, man. The funniest thing is when we try to do like sports analogies, and then it immediately becomes apparent.
It's always
that,
wrong.
Man alive. Yeah. But it's, boy, called an audible. That's it.
What is that? I don't even know what
I say we announce that that's whenever you're like on the football field.
You lost me already.
Well, just listen. You have planned out this like play or whatever. And then, like, in the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to work out, so you call, like, and I'm probably get it wrong anyway. Whatever. Anyway, you just kind of change it on the fly.
Who gives a shit?
Green jacket, yellow jacket, who gives a shit? I can't wait till our kids are old enough to watch those movies, dude.
Yeah, the weird thing is I don't think those, I don't know, man, those movies just don't resonate as much with younger kids. I mean, not younger kids, but like my buddy Rass, I think we tried to watch a few of those, and it was just sort of like, cool.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, he's in his like mid to late 20s.
I mean, it's like 13-year-old humor, so you got to hit it. You got to hit it whenever you got to strike when the eye.
Yeah, I think it hit when we were 13, so it, you know.
I mean, like I can understand some people not liking Adam Sandler's brand of humor. I get it. It can be annoying sometimes when it's just him just being like, you know?
Yeah.
But like you can't deny, like Chris Farley's pretty universal. You know, like Black Sheep and Tommy Boy, man.
You know, I was always, David Spade, like in those movies was probably like the least funny part. But I feel like as I've gotten older, I don't know, I pick up on like his humor a little more now.
Yeah, because he's sarcastic.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I should have always liked that because I'm a little like that.
Kind of a sarcastic.
But like, I don't know. I feel like I appreciate it a little more now that I'm older.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, like, yes, I think we should just talk about how we decided to kind of make some changes to the list.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. Love it. Hey, all you boys and girls. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad. A podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. I'm your host, Tyler Bence, and this is your other host,
Woody Brown. I'm actually pretty excited about today's show because I do want to talk about WandaVision, man.
Yeah, me too.
You know, what's funny is most of the time, well, our back in the day, we would just call each other and start talking about whatever. So, like, typically, the way it would work is one of us would have watched WandaVision and then immediately either started texting the other and or make that phone call and start talking about what our thoughts were. Now, that turns into one of us says something about it and then we're like, save it for the podcast, don't tell me. So now, literally, I have both of us have watched it, you know, episodes 1 and 2. I have no idea what you think about it. And you roughly have no idea what I think about it, other than like I kind of just gave you that sort of fair warning.
Which I kind of already had a feeling.
Well, the fair warning to like make sure you watch both episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just the one, right?
And you're right. You were right.
You want to just dive on in?
Yeah. So this is a new series on Disney Plus called WandaVision. If you've never heard of it, it's by a company called Marvel Studios or Marvel Cinematic Studios.
Which at this point is just a straight up powerhouse. I mean, right?
Oh yeah, dude. And I gotta say, talking about that and talking about it being on Disney Plus, which is, in everybody's homes pretty much. If you have kids.
Yeah, the greatest thing that ever happened to parents with children.
Yeah, definitely. It's huge. Everybody sees it. It's a giant moneymaker. So I've got to say, when I see stuff like WandaVision, taking some pretty big risks thus far, at least 2 episodes in, I can really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of, well, first, let me just say this. If you haven't watched WandaVision yet, heads up, there could potentially, we'll try not to, but there could be potential spoilers ahead.
Definitely.
So maybe if this pertains to you, go ahead and just press pause and then come back after you've watched it. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then, continue.
Yeah, on this podcast, anytime you hear that siren like you hear in the background right now, that means it's about to be a pretty heavy spoiler alert.
Yep. Okay, now we'll give a chance to.
I've been trying to work in that siren forever.
Take pause. I like how you just make up a sound effect that I'm supposed to just find and put in.
Well, it makes it so that if it's on the record.
Hey man, I get it. I get it, man. You don't need to explain. I got it. It is kind of refreshing in a way that when I heard that they were going to do WandaVision and even the what if stuff.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, whoa, it's kind of bold. Especially being sort of their first releases as the Disney Marvel combo, right? And so I don't know if Disney's kind of, well, I don't know. I don't know what kind of softened their potential sort of, not anticipation, but
projection.
No, I just, it's interesting to me because it's not just oh, I know, we'll just make a movie
superhero
show about a, obscure character. Mm-hmm. This is taking two, not relatively mainstream now that there've been the big sort of Marvel Universe movies, but making it so kind of weird and stuff, I thought was an interesting, bold step. But I'm kind of, interested in your thoughts, just right out of the gate, that first episode. I already kind of know because you did send me a little bit of a text, and so let people know what you're just right, maybe a third into it.
Yeah, your
thoughts are what?
Well, so my feeling by the time I got to the end of the first episode was, and again, spoiler alert, I was so okay, let me preface with this. As much as I'm into analog and into old stuff, we both are into all the style and aesthetic of stuff from yesteryear. There's still that 80s 90s kid thing that's built inside of me where it's hard for me to watch something in black and white a little bit. And it's something that I actually don't like that about myself, but there's I don't know what it is, but something about it just kind of makes me zone out a little bit. And so by the time I got to the end of the first episode, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is this sort of niche. Which one's right?
Well,
niche.
There's a million different
ways
to say it.
I can appreciate sort of the niche kind of oh, it's black and white. It's kind of Leave It to Beaver. Scarlet Witch is kind of a I Dream of Jeannie kind of vibe where she's using her magic and all these crazy hijinks ensue.
Right.
And I like that, but after an entire episode, it was
boy, I hope the whole thing is
it's
this. That's kind of what I thought, right?
But I will say, even though it was still in that vibe, for the most part of the second episode as well, it did kind of expand. It did kind of, open up with new characters and new sort of set pieces. And I don't know, and maybe a little bit of it was just kind of getting into the groove of what they were going for. In the beginning, it just sort of felt like, okay, we're doing this sort of homage to the campy, ultra sort of naive and innocent, shows of yesteryear. And there were a couple like tongue-in-cheek kind of like wink at the camera little things that I thought were pretty cool, but it was kind of like, okay, one episode's enough of like this. But it kind of grew on me a little in the second episode. What about you?
Yeah, same thing, man. I remember, so my wife and I were watching it, and, probably about, I don't know, and then, the episodes are like around 30 minutes, maybe just a little less. And so about halfway through, I kind of looked back at her, and I was like, I mean, God. Because, like, I wanted to just,
love it.
Watching the trailer and stuff, it's just super intriguing because there's like this weird mystery about it, and you can kind of get that, you can pick that up in the trailer. And so I thought, well, okay, it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting take. And like you said earlier, that fondness for those old TV shows and the laugh track in sitcom and that kind of stuff kind of helps you. And I'm a little different than you. Like it being in black and white didn't really bug me, and typically doesn't bug me. It does, however, my wife has no interest in that kind of stuff most of the time. But because she's watched all the Marvel movies and loves them and is somewhat invested in those characters, she was able to kind of like sit through. So I think out of the gate, one of my first things that I kind of came to understand was if you have no previous history with these characters, you might not make it through that first episode.
Not at all. There's no way.
Right. And so, it is kind of cool. I don't know if you noticed, but within Disney Plus, there's also like a new kind of thing in the extras there where they do little like recaps of characters, and they're going to start doing that.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think it's to help people kind of understand who these people are with all these new shows that are coming out. And so when you watch the ones about Wanda and you watch the one about Vision, you get, like a very condensed sort of, version of their history and stuff. And so you can kind of get a better idea. So that's certainly helpful. But so there we were like halfway in, and I was like, oh man, am I just forcing myself to like this?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I had that kind of feeling. But then around the time that they had the dinner party, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you remember this part, but
I know exactly what you're going to say.
There's this
one
moment
word
where
she says.
Well,
is that what you're doing?
No.
Oh,
and so now I can't wait to hear what your thing is. But basically, and again, I watched this like a couple of nights ago, so I might not even remember the exact moment that you're talking about. But the moment that caught me, like, man, this is like a little mysterious. Is they're at dinner with his boss and his boss's wife, who was like the lady from that 70s show, which was I thought that was kind of cool. I
love her, yeah. And I like his boss too. That actor's great too.
Yeah, that was good. They asked them both, hey, when did you meet? Where did you get married? Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, where did we meet? And there's this like expression that both of them take on that is really weird, because it's not like they're trying to cover up a lie so that they don't get caught being superheroes. Yeah. It's literally like they genuinely don't remember. And they're like just completely puzzled by that. Well, in the meantime, the boss starts choking on like a shrimp or something. I don't remember what it was.
Here's what I'm talking about.
And yeah, dude. And then there was this weird exchange between Wanda and Vision. It was almost like they were in this like trance.
Yeah.
And then finally she's like, Vision,
that's the one.
Help, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. And then that was pretty awesome. And I thought that was kind of cool how they showed him like reach into the guy's body and like pull out that food or whatever. That was kind of like a function that they hadn't shown in any of the movies, or an ability.
Well, he can change his density, which means he can, and this is just off the cuff. I don't have anything, like I don't know the exact specifics of like the extent of his powers,
the
but
science behind it or whatever.
He can change like his density, so he can. What makes him so powerful is he can change it to where I guess he can change like the speed of the molecules moving around. So that's how he can like sort of phase through stuff, or how he can reach into stuff. But then he can also change his density to where he's, like 10,000 pounds. So if he's like hitting, it's like he can change the, that punch to be something that was hitting you that's like 10,000 pounds, or maybe even more.
Man, he does a punch with a punch, or a pile drive to the face.
No, yeah, what you're talking about is the moment that I was talking about. Yeah, I like the idea that all of this sort of like wink at the camera and like I mean, we're looking like for all those fans of like the Marvel movies and stuff, like we all are. It's like anytime you see the Vision, he's very sort of. I mean, that's what he is. He's an android. He's a robot. He's very like, sort of flat, if you will. And I think Paul Bettany plays it. He's amazing. Mm-hmm. And then her, Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, she's very, very sort of solemn and very
controlled rage.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and she's, I guess technically she's like, well, originally she's Magneto's daughter. Mm-hmm. Magneto and Quicksilver are Magneto's daughter, but you don't really see that on the big screen because of licensing, and Fox owns the X-Men universe, and then Marvel proper now, owns the Avengers sort of characters. Mm-hmm. So I think what is Maximoff? Russian? Why am I forgetting this?
I think so, man. I want to say that it's Russian or Eastern European.
It's that very so her like sort of delivery is very like solemn and kind of that Eastern European, not flat, but just it could come across as like a little cold. So watching this show, we're seeing these characters with little bits of that, but in a totally different way. So that's to me what was so cool about the dinner scene, because it's like you were talking about. It's like when they ask him this question, it's like, oh wait a minute, we don't know how we met. And it's like they kind of, especially I think Wanda realizes like, oh, wait a minute, like what's happening here?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's like this glimmer of realization that it's like, wait, that should be.
This is like a dream, or this is like
why can't I remember this? Yeah. Almost like the veil between whatever's going on and reality just kind of thins out a little bit there, and there's this realization of like, wait, this isn't right.
Exactly. And I absolutely loved Olsen. I thought her acting was amazing here. She literally just says Vision when the boss is choking on the food. He's about to die, and it's almost like that's the only time you see sort of the real Wanda like snap out of this like I Dream of Jeannie, kind of like campy kind of like
caricature,
which is adorable, but like it's like she just flips it off and is like Vision, like basically like do what you do, and he just like reaches in and. So it was like it was cool. It was like they were able to like sort of flip off like whatever this sort of mirage or facade is and get to it. And then I also thought, well, let's get there later. I was going to say I'm trying to jump to the end of the second episode, but let's get there first.
I want to talk about on the first episode two other moments that I want to talk about. That like so that was kind of the moment right there, the dinner party type thing. Especially whenever they have that exchange, the weird realization that something's not right, and then he saves them and they leave. And it's funny because essentially, again, sorry about the spoilers, but that's essentially pretty much the end of the episode. And that was when I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
There's something deeper than this sort of like sugar-coated 50s facade, right? So that's when it kind of pulled me in. And then, dude, I loved the way, the two moments after that I loved was, one, I love the way they kind of get in front of the couch and then he like essentially picks up the TV remote, smiles and turns it off, and that's kind of like we're looking in on them through this television almost, And then right after that, it pulls out and it almost seems like, I don't know if it's a military base, I don't know if it's S.H.I.E.L.D., and it looks like someone's watching this show, and then it goes to the credits.
And it's like in color, and they're watching like a little black and white television,
black and white TV,
or monitor or whatever,
And so I was like, whoa, man, this is okay. That kind of hooked me. So like especially about this first episode, my fear is people that are, less familiar and or maybe don't have the same kind of fondness that you or I do about these movies and stuff, or these characters in general. I feel like maybe they're like, well, we keep on hearing about this, and man, we watched everything that Disney Plus has available with our kids, so okay, cool, there's something new. They give that first episode a try, and then 10 minutes in, they're like, nope,
Yeah.
That's kind of my fear with that first episode.
Yeah, me too.
But I think it was super smart for them to release that second episode simultaneously, because if they hadn't, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd be super hyped up about waiting for the second episode. You know what I mean?
And again, this is coming from huge fans of. I mean, I'm a literal comic book artist, so like, I mean, this is like something that we're anything new that comes out like comic movie wise or film or show or whatever is a huge kind of thing for us. So, I have to agree too. I thought that, and what's funny too is you sort of prefaced that, like we didn't talk about it at all, but you said, because we were going to start the show today. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time, yada, yada, yada. Do I need to watch, can I just get by watching the first episode? And you were like, no. And that was definitely a good call.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad when you agree with me.
Agree. Also, the end of that first episode, and I can't remember, I literally just watched these, but I can't remember if it was in the first episode where you hear like the voice.
No.
That's only in the second episode? But it does it twice though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad that, because I definitely want to talk about that too. So let's jump into the second. And funny enough, I don't even know if these episodes are titled. Do you know that?
I don't think so.
Because sometimes I kind of don't want them to be. Because
it always gives it away, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't even with like Mandalorian, which we haven't even discussed the end of season 2 on here. But with shows like that, I don't even look at the title for fear that it would, kind of give something away. The good news is for WandaVision, it's just titled Episode 1, Episode 2. Again, Episode 1 comes in at a 29-minute mark, and Episode 2 is 36 minutes. So you can knock that out in a quick hour with your spouse, loved one, whatever, friends.
I mean, even kids. Well, so far. I have a feeling it's going to get a little more intense, but...
That, and I just don't know if they're going to have, like, if they're younger than 10.
Oh, they're going to hate the black and white.
They're just not going to get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what we liked or didn't like about Episode 2.
Okay.
Right after we get back from this break. It's my favorite thing to do.
We will return after these messages.
Tyler, man, there's one thing that got me through this COVID craziness. I got in the mail a couple of items from our merch store. And I got to tell you, man, this crew neck sweater is maybe one of the most comfortable things I've ever worn. The inside of it is like, I don't know how to explain it, man. I'm never going to take this thing off.
Wait a minute, we have sweaters?
I mean, you know what I'm saying, sweatshirts. This sweatshirt is the most comfortable thing I have ever put on. I also got this like really cool trucker cap that says BE RAD on it. I mean, I think if people haven't already, they need to go check out our merchandise store. They can find it at shop.spreadshirt.com/thatwouldberad. So again, that's shop.spreadshirt.com/thatwouldberad.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures.
From another dimension, another world, I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
You're listening to That Would Be Rad.
Okay. Should we take another break just so you can cut me off? I really liked... I have to say this. I think my favorite thing about Episode 2, and it's funny because I just got through going through this big diatribe about like how I didn't love the first episode, the black and white campiness, but like it really did work for the second one. And my favorite part is when he, it's something that would totally be in, if this were a show back in the 50s, this would 100% be in the plot, where he chokes on the gum and like does the little animation sequence where it's, kind of black and white hand-drawn animation, and it shows like the gum getting like stuck in his gears and stuff.
God, dude,
that was so great.
Too,
yeah.
So cool. Well, and I also loved how like, these are two people that, let's just pretend for just a second that they're just trying to fit into this time. Not necessarily. They're just trying to fit into a weird 50s sitcom. They don't want to be known as superheroes, right? And so, and certainly Vision's character, doesn't want it to be discovered that he's a robot, or whatever. And so they try their best to just be normal. And that's kind of what this like second episode was, is kind of them trying to conform to just the society norms, right? And so I thought it was hilarious, man, when Vision, so he like meets up with these guys, I think in the library. I don't remember that part exactly where it was, but it's their neighborhood watch or whatever. And so it's just a bunch of guys. And his like attempt to just be one of the guys, I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
And like really endearing, you know? And I loved how the gum essentially just made him drunk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it getting caught in the gears made him act like a drunk human. All right.
No, I said yeah.
So I liked that. And then leading up to the like the magic show.
Which that was a really cool. I
Costume of hers.
Man, I did like that costume. I like the fact, and I thought it was a really smart way to kind of break it down where, you know, he's basically, like what he said, he's basically drunk because of the gum thing. And so he's kind of making all these like blunders and sort of mistakes, which is working because it looks like he's kind of putting on this act. And then her, because she is kind of like a witch and she has power, she's using her powers to basically create
the illusion.
Like, yeah, well, create like a like where the surrounding looks like it's fake, basically.
Right.
Like,
yeah, so like the first illusion that they try is him flying. He just starts flying or floating, you know? And then she makes it look like there's a rope holding him, and
right.
know, or like the one where it's like
the mirrors
piano, and then it's like, oh, it's really just a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I thought that was really cool. And it definitely felt like, I mean, it feels like, and you know, again, I don't know if it's like the showrunner or sort of like the idea, whose is it, but you can tell that like whoever is kind of leading the charge on like, at least these first two episodes, has a real love for that early, you know, 50s Atomic Family, black and white sitcom kind of thing. Because I mean, it really is like pitch perfect. The design and like the wardrobe is amazing.
Yeah, man.
She looks incredible. Like all their hair, and like it's so cool and so well done.
And it's funny too, because one of the first things that I wondered when I saw the first episode was like going back and kind of learning a little bit about black and white film, or like filming movies in black and white, and the things that directors had to do differently than, you know, somebody that's shooting in color, like, you know, the original Superman and all that, like wouldn't be able to just be in front of the black and white camera with the red and blue suit that we all know. They have to have like suits that are like essentially it's like different shades of gray.
Yeah, it's like weird coloring and
yeah. And so I wondered whenever I saw Vision, like if, you know, they just painted him in different gray tones, you know, to achieve that look.
Yeah.
But, you know, another thing about this second episode that began to kind of give the viewer promise was Wanda kind of hears something outside. She goes to kind of investigate it, like, what was that? And it's this like toy helicopter that is red.
Right.
You know? And so then it was kind of like, okay, man, good news. We won't have to deal with it being black and white for very much longer. Something's going to happen, you know.
Which
there's a bunch.
Did it ever like explain like why, like what kept hitting the window and like?
No, I mean in the scene where something's hitting the window, it was
the
like
tree,
a tree branch or whatever. But that helicopter did have a
what did it say on it?
Symbol on it. I don't.
It looked like
remember
almost like an airborne, like a shield with like a dagger through the middle.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and rewatch that part, but there was something significant, and I feel like I like knew. Oh, okay, there's a whatever. But another interesting part, a couple of things. One, I know Paul Bettany, or I remember him first from A Knight's Tale. Remember, he was just
great,
hilarious, and just an amazing.
That was
character.
A great movie, by the way.
Oh yeah, man, cool soundtrack, you know, all that. So it was cool to see him be. Because he's played Vision all this time, he's, like you said, very flat, kind of stoic, and just sort of like, you know, an android.
Right.
Like a robot's going to behave a certain way, not human, despite how hard they try. Well, it was cool to see him be humorous, you know. In that whole magic show, he was just hilarious, and some of the things that he did were just funny. So it was cool to see him do that. But there are a bunch of like weird moments, like when she goes to that, I don't know what it is, tea party or whatever. And I think this is what you were talking about earlier. The lady that is like hosting it, first off, there's some kind of weird vibe with that lady.
Big time.
And then the lady gets her hand cut and it's like bleeding red. Yeah. And while that's happening, or like right before that, there's this like radio signal that keeps on cutting into this like radio that's kind of close by or on a table or whatever. And you can barely make out that it's like, Wanda, you know, with like static and all this stuff going on. And so, again, and it's very hard to kind of, in the moment, you don't necessarily realize that, or I didn't, until like at the end when you kind of hear it again, you know?
And I tried to pinpoint, like, man, whose voice is that? Is it like, you know, is it going to be one of the Avengers? I don't know. I specifically went back and re-listened to it at the end of the episode, and I was like, I don't know. I'm not pinpointing it, but that could just be, you know, like sort of a misdirection.
Yeah. And it's weird too because, you know, we don't know when this is taking place. It's just strange because, you know, Vision in, God, what is it? Was it Infinity War or Endgame when he bites it? I guess it's Endgame, right?
Yes.
Or like the end of Infinity War, I don't remember.
But does he come back though?
See, I don't remember, man.
No. That was
I gotta go back.
Yeah, Infinity War.
Yeah, because I feel like he's definitely gone though. Because like in Endgame, I think that's what happens. Thanos like pulls the thing off of. I don't know.
Which, by the way, did you notice that that looks different? The little where the stone was on the Avengers movies. I mean, obviously it's in black and white, but it looks a little different than it did in the other ones. Yeah. So I don't know if this is like, you know, pre. Or, I mean, well, it'd have to be post, technically, right? Like when the show takes place.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless it just takes place completely out of time. Which, by the way, this is another thing that probably a lot of comic fans, if you've read the series, are going to pick up on. There was like a little run of the Vision, you know, and it was several issues, and it was really, really great. It was basically exactly like this, which you can clearly tell that they totally pulled from this run in the comics. It's set in like the, you know, modern day, but Vision somehow like duplicates himself and creates like a family. But there's that like, you know, early 50s kind of like Leave It to Beaver innocence, you know, about his whole family. So in the comic, like it just shows them sort of interacting with like the modern world, and you know, the kids are getting picked on at school and that kind of thing. So it's pretty much just like what we're seeing now, except, you know, there's no kids, and then, you know.
Although, speaking of that, man.
What?
See, and also like just strange stuff happens in the show, and I'm just like, what is going on? So toward the end of the second episode, they get done with the magic show, everything's hunky-dory, they're back at home, and she's like, Vision, is this real? And she's like, pregnant.
What? I didn't even notice that.
Oh, yeah, man. And so that was like, what in the world? And then like something happens. I got to go back and watch it. I'm sorry, audience. God, I feel unprepared here. But something happens, and then they both turn color.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how? It's just, it does a lot to just mess with your head, really, in terms of like, how do they fit in? And oddly enough, things in their surroundings, like the people, the other characters that are around them, don't seem to notice a lot of things. So rewinding back to the first episode when Vision saves the boss, he didn't say anything like, hey man, you just put your hand in my throat and pulled out a piece. You know what I mean?
Right.
The wife was acting a little funny, but it wasn't like, whoa, what in the world? What just happened here? How did you do that? It was almost like they are...
Almost like they're like non-player characters.
Exactly. They're just kind of like in this world, and you can't really do a lot to...
Sort of shake them.
Try to mess with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Even down to the... when he's hanging out with like the guys, you know, and they make a joke about eating or something, and he's like, oh, well, I don't eat food. And then he has to kind of like backtrack and say, well, I don't eat food in between meals. And it's like they don't really pick up on it. And then they... Right. Which this was a sort of a funny little little like thing that they do is like, you know, he would say these things, and then instead of like making fun of him, they just kind of kept playing it off like he was like joking, you know. So it would kind of flip where it's like, oh, you're so funny, you're such a funny guy, you know, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And it just kind of leads me to believe more that potentially they're just like, it's almost like they're in some sort of artificial world, and maybe it's just their like conscience is somehow uploaded into it or something. I don't know, man. It's interesting. I never read the kind of WandaVision type comics or anything. You know,
Scarlet Witch.
When I was a kid, I just didn't have any. I guess Dazzler was the only one that I was interested in.
We're gonna get so much hate mail for you saying that.
I'll delete that. But I mean, she was hot.
No. She was awesome.
So like, I only have like one issue ever.
Well,
so
plus Dazzler had
not a big deal,
those
guys.
real
Roller skates.
real covers though.
Yeah,
which was pretty cool.
So, anyways, I'm interested to see where they take this show. It's super like, to me, it's very intriguing.
Me too.
And I just can't. It's weird and it nags at you. It's like I can't figure it out. I don't know what's going on. And so I think that's really smart writing. Actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to say, I mean, even just us talking about it, it makes me want to go back and you know, watch it again to see what else I've missed. You know, one thing that I thought, the one thing that this reminded me of, and tone wise, it's completely different. But there was a show called Legion that came out on FX. Did you ever watch that? Legion. I know I begged you to, but
I think it's on. Legion.
It's on FX. He's Professor X's son, basically, and it is amazing. But there's a lot of, it kind of gets in your, you don't know how much is real or how much is sort of like just in your head. You know, it does a really, really good job of sort of blurring the line of like what's real and what's, you know, not. And so that was the thing that kind of reminded me a lot of that show. Like everything will be going great, and then there'll be like a little something that sort of like sticks out that doesn't quite belong in, you know, the 50s sort of sitcom environment. And it's like, wait a minute, what was that? And then it goes right back in, you know. So yeah, I think that's great writing. I think that stuff's really cool, and that sort of, that kind of meta, like wink at the camera, you know, self-awareness. Like I've always really liked that kind of, that trope anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I do sometimes, but when that's the, like, when it becomes like overbearing, I think I did try to watch Legion, and I don't know if it was maybe it was the actors.
Dude, the actors are
I don't know, man. Yeah, I just couldn't, and maybe, you know, this is several years ago that show came out, so maybe, you know, for whatever reason, back then I just didn't have the patience for it or whatever, but I'll give it a try.
Dude, you got to go back.
It's just like, I think sometimes, you know, sometimes you sit down, you don't want to have to like have the patience to enjoy something. It should just be able to be like enjoyable. You know what I mean? And I think with that initially, I didn't have the patience for whatever reason, but I'll definitely give it a
Yeah,
go.
I mean, well, and I got to preface too, like the second season, man,
Yep, changed my mind.
I mean, the second season is a lot harder to follow a little bit. At least it was for me. You know.
See what I'm
But the
saying.
first season is in my top 5 of all time favorite shows. It's incredible.
Of ever
Dude,
any
just
show.
go back. The music.
You still haven't watched Lost. That's why.
The music,
that's why
like
you're saying. So you guys still haven't watched Columbo, and that's why
the
you're saying
song
this.
choices. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'll check it out. I'll take it.
And I think it's the same director that does all the Fargo stuff, which is also
That's
one of my
good.
favorite shows. Yeah, we should do a whole episode on all the
Fargo?
seasons of Fargo. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. I need to go back and watch.
Oh, dude, they're awesome.
Watch them. So, I mean, like, let me ask you this. Do you think, and I know some of it's kind of changing now. I haven't kept up with it that much. I know a lot of the rights are being obtained and things are kind of like making a transition over to one spot for Marvel. Did we, as an audience, as fans of the movies and comics and stuff, did we miss out tremendously by the X-Men not being able to be a part of the Avengers Endgame kind of, you know, team up type stuff?
I mean, I would say absolutely. I'm a huge X-Men fan. Like, especially throughout the 80s into the 90s, the Chris Claremont run was just...
Jim Lee.
Yeah, well, I mean, Chris Claremont with Mark Silvestri, Jim Lee, there were several. Rick Leonardi, well, he did some New Mutant stuff, but that's like one of the greatest runs of any comic ever made, just the Uncanny X-Men throughout the 80s and 90s. And so I was always way more invested in the X-Men stuff. So that, when Iron Man first came out, I think that if it weren't for just the charisma of Robert Downey Jr., I don't know that it would have had the impact or carried the weight enough to basically build the Marvel Universe off of.
Yeah, 100%.
Because honestly, if we're being honest here, Iron Man was never like, oh, it's a big blockbuster comic. It was always just like, yeah, it's cool. And then, oh yeah, he's in the Avengers. But even the Avengers, as sort of iconic as they are, Thor and Iron Man and Captain America, as valuable as those characters are, for comics in general, just the book, like the Avengers, to me at least, was never really anything that great. So I think Kevin Feige really taking his time and really planning ahead and like creating like the connective tissue between all these other like sort of spin-off movies to build up to, by the time we got the Avengers movie, he had already sort of laid the groundwork of all these other characters. And so it was like this big, amazing payoff that DC is still trying to figure out, and I don't know that they ever will, but to the idea of someone putting that kind of, TLC into a property like X-Men, I mean, it would be incredible. I mean, I feel like they've dropped the ball so much. I mean, and there's some cool stuff. I mean, X-Men First Class, there were some cool moments. The original ones, I mean, the original X-Men and then X2, that Nightcrawler sequence in the White House.
Yeah, that was cool.
There was some amazing stuff. But if it was handled like they handled the Avengers and also not even just giving it the love that it deserved, but also like basically sticking with what we have in the pages of the comic books instead of, in the X-Men universe, you have, there are thousands of characters, villains, like offshoot characters, random characters, like C, D, E, F level characters. But yet you have these X-Men movies where you're just bringing in these like stupid new characters. It's like, what are you doing? Out of all the comics in the world, like you have probably the most characters from the X-Men books. And I don't know. There's just so many things that they've missed. So
you and I have talked about that before about First Class.
Yeah.
It's just hard, man. It's hard to go back and watch those movies because they're early 2000s, not First Class, but the original X-Men movies. They're like early 2000s. At the time when they came out, man, I was obsessed.
Oh, amazing.
Because it's like, holy smokes, this is the first time you actually get to see these characters that were, like you said, man, they were far more cooler to me than, well, I'll just say I cared about them more than I did any of the Avengers, except for Thor. When I was a kid, I thought Thor was just awesome. But outside of that, man, I really never, I was like, who cares, But X-Men, it was like, oh, man, you get to see them in real life. I thought they did, at the time, a really good job with that. I mean, there's some stuff, if you go back and watch, it's just like super corny, but
black leather, bell bottoms, or boot cut. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, again, if Wolverine would have come on the screen for the first time in his typical sort of like yellow suit, I don't know if we would have, you know what I mean? It might not.
Yeah, but and that's a perfect example of like just stupid decisions of like, you're already making a movie that is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of issues of these comics, through the course of like, I don't know, 50 years? And it's like, why would you not give your audience what they've wanted the entire time? It's just, and then like another thing that was just weird is like, in those original bunch of X-Men movies, just odd decisions like, okay, let's make Rogue and Iceman like teenagers. It's like, why would you do that? Just bring in Jubilee, let her fill the role of of the younger, adolescent kid that Wolverine's going to kind of take up under his wing, which is exactly what happened in the comics. It's just weird stuff like that. I mean, and Iceman, Bobby Drake he was in the original 60s cast of X-Men. You had Beast, Iceman, Professor X, Marvel Girl or Jean Grey, and Cyclops. It's just like, why would you make them like teenagers? And I don't know, man. Weird. Yeah, there's some weird writing decisions, and there's a bunch of cool stuff that happened in First Class. Yeah.
I loved Fassbender as Magneto, man. I thought that was brilliant.
And McAvoy was awesome.
As Professor X, I thought both of those guys just killed it, man.
Too.
I think some of the other actors and stuff did a good job of playing the young X-Men, but like I said, man, there's just, I don't know. I think because the X-Men are, in a way, like kind of hard, I think, to bring to the big screen because of all the stuff that they can do. And I don't know, I do think, like you said, in X2, the Nightcrawler stuff, I thought was amazing.
And dude, it stands up.
I think they did a great job.
It still stands up.
Dude, they did a great job with that character, man. I mean, honestly, we go in these like cycles here at my house where we'll start from, the very beginning, whether that's Iron Man. We've watched them in all kinds of different orders, either order of release, chronological in terms of their timeline. Right. We've done it all, right? And so like maybe 2 months ago, we kind of like exhausted it. And we're like, well, man, we need a break from Marvel movies. And like after seeing WandaVision, I'm kind of like,
yeah, dude, me too, man.
I kind of want to go back,
Yeah, me too.
So I will say that's one really cool thing, even if it's an accident on their part, to kind of reignite that need to revisit those stories and those movies and stuff and break out the old comics and that kind of thing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, as most of the topics that we talk about, we could probably go on forever and ever. Like, we didn't even talk about the fact that, the Scarlet Witch in the early movies has a pretty thick Russian accent.
I forgot about that.
As time progresses, she has less and less and less and less and less of one in the movies. And in this show, of course, none at all. At first I thought, whoop, that's a movie mistake. But then I kind of read a little bit about it, and I'm still not satisfied with the answer. I kind of think that it was not the editor. What is the name of the person on set that, like, the continuity
kind of thing
person?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they didn't review all the early movie scenes to make sure that the way she talks in game, for example, matched up, because they don't really, but who knows? I think this is a good place to
wrap her up.
To stop, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we start up another topic, we could go a couple more hours with like, superhero movies and stuff. One thing I do want to say, coming up in March is they're releasing the Justice League Zack Snyder cut on HBO.
Although I heard that the release date might have gotten pushed again.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. We'll have to look into that, because I am kind of pumped about that.
Oh, man. This says, actually yesterday, it says Zack Snyder seemingly confirms Justice League will be a 4-hour movie.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, you heard like the deal with it, right?
Is it going to be black and white, man? Speaking of which, I think I remember reading something about that too.
No, I think just the trailers have been black and white. But apparently, all of Joss Whedon's scenes he totally scrapped.
Oh yeah.
So it's basically an entirely new movie, which is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about it.
For the rest of my life, and I'm not even joking here, for the rest of my life,
mustache.
I will never, I don't want to say never be madder than I was when this happened, but it's going to be pretty close. I was so furious in the opening freaking scene when you see Superman and he's got a CGI mouth happening, because
the worst.
Like, oh my, it was awful, man.
It was so bad. I mean,
I wanted to get up right then. And it's not even a minute, that's 60 seconds into the movie. And I wanted to be like, whoop, I wasted my money.
Dude, you and the listeners need to go on YouTube and see if you can find, I'll see if I can find it, and we'll put it like in the show notes or something. But when that movie came out and there was just such an outrage, which honestly, I think 20% of the reason that I gave that movie so much grief was because of that, because it was just so badly done. It's like you're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars making this, but yet your team who is creating like this weird mouth flap, like mustache cover in CGI, it's the worst thing you've ever seen, like, period. Mm-hmm. And so how there was, and see, again, this kind of does, actually, I'm glad we brought this up, because this goes back to why the Marvel movies were done so well, because you have a guy like Kevin Feige who, you know, talking about continuity, you know, they're planning this stuff so far ahead of like what we're seeing, so that by the time we do get to those moments, there is like a big payoff. There are things about it that feel natural and organic. And I mean, God, there's nothing like that for the DC universe, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's almost like there's like they just don't have the same level of, it's either one of two things or a combo of both. They don't have the same level of respect for the catalog and or fans, you know, or they don't have the skill set, or it's a combination of both of those things. And in either case, that sucks, man. For such a like franchise, man, that is literally like, I mean, if you look at what happened with Marvel after Iron Man, I mean, dude, there's people that have gotten paid, son. You know, and I'm not.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm not saying that, you know, the people under DC haven't and everything. And there have been incredible movies and stories told. I mean, Christopher Nolan, to me, you know, we've talked about it, I think, on the show before. Like, number one, I almost feel like he has done no wrong in terms of movie making since he came on the scene,
pretty
period.
Well, a couple missteps with making Christian Bale sound like he's talking like the Cookie Monster. Other than that, though.
Well, you know, but I will say, you know, when it happened, I was like, what? But kind of like thinking about it and making it a more realistic.
It makes sense logically.
Than any movie previously. Like, that's always been kind of an issue with me. It's like, so the only disguise for Superman is he puts on glasses or takes them off? Come
well,
on,
I mean,
right?
And I'm cool with that, like, suspension of disbelief thing. You know, it's like, I constantly have to sort of check myself and like be like, okay, like pull back a little. Like, these are superhero movies, you know, like suspend your disbelief a little bit and let them get away with it. But it's, you know, there's a few things. Honestly, if I look at the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight universe, to me, it's almost like he took the character. I mean, it's kind of a standalone thing. I mean, he gave it like such, you know, there's such a gravity and a weight to like those movies and a seriousness, not in a way that DC does with every other movie where it's like, oh, we got to be so dark and like, oh, that's what's cool and that's what's like, it's like you're trying way too hard. I mean, look at the Avengers. Like, they're the characters that we see in the comics. They're not versions of those characters and then just like, like some middle schooler being like, man, we got to make these characters dark. If it always feels like a studio sort of decision when they do that stuff.
Although, man, Zack Snyder Joker was Todd. Sorry, the guy that did.
Oh
Joker. Todd Phillips. Yeah, so like Todd Phillips' Joker. Is that what you're talking about? Because I mean, I thought that was
no. I thought that was
pretty.
No,
brilliant.
That was great. And honestly, I think that it's weird. It's like, I just feel like for a movie, like, I'm okay with these movies being like darker, but I just wish that like and again, we probably have a lot of people out there that are annoyed with our opinions, and some probably agree, but like, I kind of feel like, okay, these are characters, you know, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. These are characters that were around like in like the 40s. So these are like the all-American kind of, I don't know. It's just like, it just feels a little disrespectful, especially for Superman, I think, is the hardest to swallow, because like, it's like, okay, so we got to have a suit, and it's got to look almost like armor, and like you're getting rid of the trunks, which annoy me, but I get it, whatever. It's like the dude's invincible. Does he really need a suit with like a
shimmer?
Well, he has a shimmer, but then it has that like sort of hexagon. What am I thinking of? It looks like a beehive. It's like, I feel like every costume has to have that, and it's just like, geez. Like Batman v Superman, I will say, and I'm definitely going to be in the minority here, but I think Ben Affleck's Batman was amazing. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree.
So
with
many
you,
people
man.
hated on him.
Really?
Oh, yeah, dude.
I thought he played a really good Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Like, I like that era of Batman anyway. Like, he's been through it a long
It's
time.
like the Dark Knight Returns a little bit kind of version.
Where he's just kind of like a little bit older, conflicted in a lot of ways. I thought he did. I thought he did well. And I mean, I don't mind different, even just like costume changes,
Oh,
and
I love
different
it.
takes and visions of it all. Like I thought his like armor suit was pretty awesome.
Well, that's
And
straight
really,
from Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, because he has the armor to compete with Superman, which I thought that did pretty well. I mean, I just want to see an entire movie of when Batman jumps through the window and he's taking out all those goons to get Superman's mom. It was just, it was amazing. I mean, that's the Batman. And so, like, when I first heard, Ben Affleck's not coming back, it's like, ugh. But, I mean, I kind of get, like, the Justice League, he just felt so underpowered standing next to gods, basically.
But there were some cool moments. Like I will say, there was a lot of moments in the Justice League movie that I was actually like, okay, that's pretty cool, man. I was less annoyed by that movie, even after the dang fake skin mustache thing in the beginning. I was less annoyed by that than I certainly was from Aquaman. And I mean, I hope that people understand that any chance I get, I love to complain about Aquaman because it was just, frankly, it was embarrassing. And I mean, God, I don't want to just get stuck on it, but I have to say, going back to that scene where they are in Italy, they're in this beautiful area of Italy. Okay, it doesn't even, like, if you go and watch that scene, forget about the fact that they both eat roses. Okay, maybe that's a cute sort of we're not of this world decision that they made. But if you go back and watch that scene, and I'm not sure, but I'm 99% positive that they actually filmed that on location in that small city in Italy.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it looks like it's a set.
Yeah, it does.
Because of just the crappy freaking filmography, man. And it's just like, you've got this giant budget. You're like, imagine being a filmmaker and literally your wish is your command, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how you're going to make it? Oh my God, dude, don't even I gotta stop. The rest, like, I could go on for hours about that movie and the decisions made and everything. And, I like to give a lot of those movies some room to be.
Yeah, I think we both do.
Not great. I liked that first Superman movie, actually. It kind of reminds me, and, I was thinking about what I said a few minutes ago when I was talking about how, Clark Kent having glasses on and then not having glasses on. You know who does a really brilliant explanation of that and makes it more, not necessarily believable, but understandable, is that book you turned me on to, Superman Birthright.
Oh, man, that's like one of the best.
And I can't remember the way they talk about it, but there's this moment where Clark's mom is kind of explaining to him, ways to kind of seem normal or something. There's some sort of like discussion, and I remember thinking, man, I've never kind of heard it explained like that, and it really kind of works, Of course, I've always been a Superman fan because I love the father-son relationship stuff.
Yeah, me too.
That they and the relationship that he has with his mom, which I think they did a really good job.
Yeah.
In the current Superman Batman.
Yeah, and God, that 3-note little piano line that Hans Zimmer does.
Oh,
I mean, it makes me want to cry every single time I hear it.
I know.
I mean, honestly, I thought the Man of Steel was amazing. I just wish that just the costuming would have been a little more old school. It just feels like, okay, you have this farm boy kind of thing who's this sort of, he's sort of fulfilling the trope of like a golden age era superhero. So, like, do we really need him to have, like, and I get the whole alien, that's not an S in my eyes.
I don't know. I'm kind of mixed feelings about that.
To me, I'm such like a classic, like for me, like All-Star Superman, Grant Morrison, and Frank Quitely. And actually, I need to let you borrow those because the artist Frank Quitely, I mean, he's amazing, but he kind of does this thing with Clark Kent where he like parts his hair like in the middle, and he's like, he wears like clothes that are always way too big, and like his whole posture changes, which I don't feel like you really ever see that like on the screen. I mean, Christopher Reeve
A little bit. Yeah, man. I thought he did a pretty good job.
But this is like, he's like almost
bumbly.
like kind of like hunched almost. And so when you see this like, chest out, like, back arched kind of thing, it's like, oh, there's Superman. But yeah, I think that we've gone on long enough.
Far too long. Yeah.
And not enough at the same time.
Yeah, I know. I think we kind of, one of the decisions that we made recently for our fantasy movie Face Off was to kind of make a few changes to the lineup.
We got some feedback.
A little bit. Yeah, we got some feedback. So we're going to make a couple changes. So just know that we do this in the best interest of trying to determine what ends up being our favorite fantasy movie from the 80s.
Yeah. Still pretty disappointed in Kroll.
Oh my gosh.
I guess that's it. You got anything else, bro?
I think that's it, man. I just, as always, thank you to everyone that comes back every week, listens to our show, sends us messages on Instagram or via email about how much you love the show or your thoughts about the episode. It means the world to us. We love to interact. We love to, hear your feedback.
Yeah, and also, we really appreciate everybody hitting up our merch. We put a lot of effort and a lot of time into coming out with some cool stuff. 25 separate designs on hundreds of different items. So, a lot of stuff flying off the shelves, and we really appreciate all that. If you want to get in touch with us, we are on Instagram as That Would Be Rad. If you want to send us an email, old school, we are at thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. Again, we appreciate it. We thank you. Without you guys, this isn't possible. We love you. We appreciate you. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes.
clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead before you became a ghost. You always